Very good. Are we all set?
We're all
Are
set.
you up for it?
I'm up for it. Yeah, thank you
Need a
for your
motion to
patience.
go-
Okay.
Oh, good. Well, call the meeting to order. Good. And so first item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Do we have any late items, any additions?
An edit.
An edit? Very good, Jillian.
Sorry, on pages 11 and 12, at the very top, that should say the joint management committee meeting June 30th,
Not April 30th. Very good.
Yeah.
Not going
Sorry.
back. That's it?
That's it.
Okay, very good. You got that step?
Mhm.
Minor amendments. Good. Everyone in favor of the agenda as amended? Perfect. So, adoption of the minutes of June 5th. If anyone had a chance to quick look at them. Attach it back. Changes, yes. Just move to adoption of it. Seconded by Mimi. Any changes, adjustments, corrections? All good. All right, all those in favor? Good, approved. On to the minutes. Public comments. Did we have any people with all of that actually trying to join us? Interesting. So now we're on to item 4. Community Center rental policy, number 2406. This is for a review and update. It looks like Jillian, do you want to take us through this?
Sienna and I.
Okay.
And at the last meeting, Sienna presented some of the challenge that she's encountered with the existing policy. And it was tasked to the group to basically figure it out and bring it back.
Right.
So Sienna, Lee and I spent quite a bit of time like running in circles around it all, trying to figure out how to make sense, and this is what we wanted to bring to you today. So some of the changes are things that to be reflected in policy and other elements in bylaw itself. So, for policy change, the proposal is to remove the category of private renter. And that the intention had been with that one, that it was essentially, we were looking at community groups essentially as the bodies that would be doing that coordination and bringing in and working with other presenters or different things they wanted to bring into the theater. But we found that it's not actually just a group. Sometimes it is an individual who's trying to do this work on behalf of the community. So allowing the community groups to be expanded out and be community renters allows individuals doing that in the community to be incorporated in that. And then you can address the type of rental itself. Is it open to the public or is it private? We can address that in the renter type. So were there other aspects of that that you wanted to go over?
Yeah, that's essentially, everything that we did was just make it a little bit more broad. So now you will have only community renter or a commercial renter. And that purely is defined based on the type of renter that you are. And then the type of event that you'll be hosting, whether it's private or public or performance, that's all done in event type. So we haven't fully taken away private rentals as a category or as a fee, just moved it to a more suitable category.
Right, very good. Yep.
Does that show up at all on the chart that's attached, page 16?
It does in
In
the
the heading?
past. Well, the category that says off-island nonprofit group used to say private renter or non-island nonprofit, so they were lumped in there together. So private was removed from there, which is why now there's the lines that are specifically for private event types. So it was just sort of a bit of a rejigging of where the information landed. So the fees for those categories didn't change at all. It's just slightly different how it's reflected.
So it's partly the titles and then partly the event.
Very good. Any other comments on this section?
If I may.
Yeah.
Page 13. In the note. The other hours may not be categorized as public social event when a renter event is involved with the performance production. I'm not sure what that means.
Yeah,
No, I was just gonna say, so that's part of the revision component that falls into the bylaw and not into the policy.
Right.
So we didn't speak to that part yet.
So,
So we were just trying to divide it up into, so how we could vote on it cleanly.
so you want it as two separate motions, one for the policy and one for the
I think
bylaw?
so.
Okay. So why don't we move to accept the policy change, since we've done that? Seconded. To change to the policy change. You don't want to second it? It's not done. Jamie, thank you. That was a push. Great. Everyone in favor of these changes, this change to the bylaw?
To the policy.
The policy? So me?
So just,
Good.
sorry, just,
This is the policy.
the proposed recommendation says, to update the policy as presented and amended, but I'm hearing there are no amendments to what you've presented, so I'm taking that out.
I think so.
That's right,
Okay.
yeah, as submitted.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Great.
Sorry,
Now
was
we-
there a mover? Can I get the?
It was, oh, sorry, it was moved by Mimi and seconded by Jamie.
And do we have an all in favor?
And all the room was in favor.
Okay, thank you, sorry.
Good. So now we can go to the amendments to the bylaws.
So what we.
Yeah, so I mean, the amendments to the bylaw, there's obviously that chart that we were looking at, as well as with adding a couple definitions that weren't ever originally in a bylaw or a policy. And sorting out what those exactly were. So our recommendation was to change the titles and the parameters of the 3 existing event type categories for specifically a theater rental. And then we'll speak about the room rentals. I mean, we've already mentioned the private or public rental, but we'll do theater first. So our existing event types were a non-performance rental, a rehearsal rental, or a performance. We found that, as we've discussed in the last meeting, these weren't entirely clear. So we came up with 3 new titles and new categories. The first being pre-event use, which would be any activity that are intended for the preparation and setup preceding a public presentation or performance. And this is also, this category would be things that are pretty much all private or closed use. So things like setting up a set, rehearsing, event takedown, sound check, technical setup, all of those things. We did originally in the first 2 categories, or our existing event categories, there was kind of some confusion on where some of these events would fall in the first one, some of them would fall in the second one. This is really combining everything into just pre-event use. So there's no difference between the non-performance or rehearsal.
Just want to add.
Yeah.
Sorry, what I wanted to add to that is that. What the original intention was, we looking at performance and non-performance. That was easily defined in a way, but then we got into, well. It's not really a performance rental if you're getting ready for that performance. So initially, the non-performance use wasn't supposed to be anything connected to a performance at all, right? It was supposed to be completely different application of a rental, right? And within the performance realm, if it was preparation for that, it was put as rehearsal.
Right,
So there was this void.
right,
And then that's where we found that what people were saying, well, actually, it's non-performance and we're not rehearsing either.
right.
So the desire to use the category that was never intended for that application
Gotcha.
came alive.
Very good.
Yeah.
Gail,
Also,
oh, sorry.
oh, sorry.
So Gail, did you want to comment on that before we went forward? Nope, she's good. Go ahead.
And a part of this void, which is why we've created the second category here, was there were a whole variety of events that didn't necessarily fall into a non-performance event. They also weren't a full-blown performance with
Right.
the level of impact that it has on the building and on tech and on staff and all those things. So yeah, we did create the second category where we felt all of those kind of unknowns would fall into, which is our presentation or social event category.
Right.
So this is a middle category, one that previously did not really exist. So our pre-event use is kind of a renaming of non-performance and rehearsal combined. This one is kind of more or less a brand new category. And then we were also looking at a new fee for this, which falls right in the
Right.
middle of
Yep.
pre-event and performance use. So this, we defined as public presentations for social events or private events. So these are typically low tech, don't require complex production. Renters aren't moving the house lights. There's a house hang, they aren't doing any of that. They can use a little bit of tech if they need the sound booth or a few lights here and there, a bit of audio, that's okay, but.
Generally, they're bringing the seats up, right?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
seats can be out, but yeah, our thought was this category typically does have a higher impact on the facility especially than pre-event use, but not quite as much as a performance production.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, whole bunch of examples that we thought of that would fall into this category.
Very good.
Any questions on that one?
Any questions on that one? Good, Gail, you're good with that?
Guess I would like an awards night. Can that just get defined?
Awards night.
Yeah, if there was some kind of community awards presentation, not that we ever do this, but.
Citizen of the Year, is that one?
Citizen of the Year, I mean, maybe, I don't think Slow Pitch would ever do this, but for example, like the Slow Pitch League or Fast Pitch, if they wanted to have their awards night
Yeah.
there, kind of thing.
Yeah, so generally it means that someone's gonna have to come in and probably move the seats out. Like, and maybe open the booth, but it's not going to be bigger than that. So it's still that you're sort of put it in the middle. That it still can cover some staff time to prep the room. Or change it from what it was, but it's not usually a lot more than that. Good, I understand.
Would that require mic and speakers?
Yeah, because.
So that's okay. They
Yeah.
can have that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's very much a middle category of it's not a full blown production, there's probably not a set, probably not a ton of setup. But we did want people to be able to use a bit of the tech without creating too many categories of,
Right.
presentation with tech, presentation without tech, we don't wanna get into that, so. Any relatively low tech, but does typically have some kind of audience or crowd or social situation.
Right, any other amendments to this bylaw that are covered by this that you want to go over?
Well, I think we haven't addressed Councilor Getty's question as well. That she asked before.
Yeah, so then just really quickly, our third category, that is essentially the same one that has already existed, the performance rental. We did change the name slightly to just performance production, just to make it a little bit more clear that it is a full scale formal production. Typically requires light, sound, stage setup, additional staff, extended facility use. So this would be plays, concerts, musicals, dance performances, high production comedy shows, so we would have to differentiate between. Things might fall in the middle a little bit, whether it's a really low tech comedy show, for example, or a high tech. Yeah, so those are our examples for that. That is essentially the same as the existing.
We're trying to get away from this, the negotiation.
Exactly,
Yes.
make it a lot
Right.
clearer.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so now
So
it's
do
very
you feel that
clearly,
you feel good with
Yes.
these changes?
I feel super, yeah, I feel very confident. I think when people are giving us the information on what the event is going to be and what kind of needs they'll have, it'll be really easy to differentiate whether this is a low impact, low tech, production or presentation, like a film screening or a lecture or something like that, or if it is gonna require more extensive setup. An event like it, the second category would probably be something where they maybe need a couple hours to set up, maybe 1 or 2 hours of tech versus a whole performance production. We've seen have been renting for several days of setup and rehearsals.
I think as long as you're comfortable with this, because you're the point person.
Mhm.
You would know what would work and
Yeah.
what.
I feel confident.
Yeah, good.
I like them.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah, Judy.
So that all makes sense and it fits with everybody's experience so far, but still that sentence.
Yes.
Other hours may not be categorized as public social events when a renter event permit involves performance production.
So
What is
that was just a little note that I added in there so that renters who were doing a full production performance can't come and kind of argue that, oh, well, this is a pre-show performance and we're not gonna be using much tech. So we'd like to be categorized as that lower category because it's gonna be a smaller than the actual production, or it's gonna be only a few people watching, or it's a rehearsal open to the public, that kind of thing. We don't want that kind of negotiation and that kind of discussions to be happening. So that note was really about if you're having a full production performance, you'll either be within your rental, you can have pre-event use or you can have your performance use. You
Right,
can't
yeah.
have that middle ground.
Excellent, makes sense. Any other comments on these amendments?
I think there's the other rooms still.
There's just the other room, right? Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so
All
this
other
is
rooms.
here, this should be hopefully pretty straightforward, but in removing public renter from the renter type, we found that that category was really defining people based on the event they were hosting rather than the group they were. So in taking that out of the group types or renter types in the policy, we had to add it in here so that we weren't losing that
Right.
private rental fee. So we are just hoping to change all of the rooms, so the conference room, meeting room, flex room, fitness studio, kitchenette. I believe those are our 5 other rental rooms. Hoping to change those from rather just the one existing event type of room rental to either a private rental or a public rental.
Right.
So even a meeting in here that's a closed meeting, that would be a private rental. If it was an open meeting or an open presentation, that would be public.
Gotcha. Yep, that makes sense. Yes, Judy.
If I might suggest, if this is going to go to council, then I would, think about and recommend, take out that last sentence. Okay, the first sentence is, where an event falls into the performance reduction category, other hours or extra hours of the rental may be characterized as pre-event use for those kinds of activities, and then that says what you're trying to accomplish, and I think the second sentence is very, very confusing. It repeats it. Yes.
Look at that,
And then it's,
asking you shall receive.
yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, that is something that can be explained, that
Yeah,
doesn't need
sure.
to be written in policy.
Yeah.
That's something that I'll know.
Any comments on the other room amendment? Just so we have the private rental, public rental. Is that clear for
Okay.
everybody? Yeah.
Sorry, and then in the table,
Right,
there,
yeah.
it's quite small, sorry. The ones that are highlighted, those are the changed categories, so we just highlighted them to show that change.
Well,
And then the actual private, all the private ones later on, those were there before, but just in a different section of the table, so they're not new content.
yes,
So-
Judy.
In terms, you've got this one page 15 that's explaining the existing and proposed. And that change is not evident on this chart. So maybe another color coding in terms of, you want color pink and blue or something. In terms of private, public, and all down that, first column of the event height.
Right.
Right.
So we've got
That's
just-
where there's a difference in flex room, crowd, private, public,
So-
studio, private, public, and help the council find that change.
Okay, do you think it'd be helpful to have the old chart and the new chart? Okay.
Maybe.
That's easy.
And all of those fees for public use, those are the existing room rental fee, so those will all be the same. The private is the one that's changed.
Right.
Yeah. So in the previous chart, if you were to look at it, that first category, yeah, that first category would all be the public line.
Right. Got it.
Yeah, so you see that the $75 for the presentation or social events at the local community rates, that's that new line
Right,
that's added, that's in between the $100 an hour and the $50.
right. There is an unmuddied stream for everyone.
Mhm.
Crystal clear. Crystal clear. Well done. Well done. Oh, well done, you guys. So I'd like to entertain a motion to approve these amendments to the bylaw by Judy.
Community Center Joint Management Committee recommends council amend Community Center rental fees bylaw 662/2024 as amended. And it's June 30th, 2025.
Mhm.
As presented and amended.
Yep, perfect, yeah,
Amended.
excellent.
Great, and I need a seconder. Gail, I think. I'm sorry, Mimi? That's good. Everyone in favor of these amendments? Good, passed. Good. Thank you. Good work, you guys.
Yeah.
Good. Now we move on to 4.3. The Bowen Theater Programming and Production Coordinator job. as presented by Gail.
We,
Gail,
can you hear me okay then?
all good, Gail.
Okay. We posted, Jillian and Kristen and I worked together to develop a more long-winded version of a job description, not long-winded, as we tried to summarize as best we could. We posted that last week, opened it for feedback, though we didn't get much feedback, but except for additions of like, the sort of thinking and the background on it, but not the actual delivery of a job description. And then I ran it through Chat GBT after we got to that point. And what you're looking at is basically, I asked Chat GBT to turn it into a postable job. And so this is how it came out, with only one mistake, which is that the numbering system under key responsibilities. I cut one thing out because it was a mistake, and then I didn't change it to 1, 2, 3. It was 1, 2, 4. So that's a small mistake. The only thing that's at all appreciably different is I had someone who I know off island look at the job description to see how they read it and how they could interpret it. They thought it was very clear. The only thing that they suggested is that we really needed to change the word from a programming and production coordinator to a programming and production manager, because we're asking them to manage production and manage a curated season, not to really just coordinate. A coordinator works under someone who is giving vision and direction, who is truly the manager, and we don't actually have anyone for that person to work under in a coordinator capacity, because it's unsustainable for it to continue to be the volunteer position of the chair of the Performing Arts Committee. So I'm making the suggestion that we change the name to the Programming and Production Manager, which is what is listed on this document. It's open for discussion. But in the doing of that, what they also argued is that you're going to be soliciting a higher level of applicants, and so that we will be getting more leadership and direction from the person who steps into the role.
Good. Thank you, Gail.
Thank you.
Very nice and clear. Well done. Any comments or questions on this now final, revised, edited, and artificially intelligent restructured job application? Hopefully we'll have a human being apply. It's good. I think it's quite clear. Thank you, Gail. I know this has been a long time coming to this point. There's been a lot of input into it. From my perspective, it covers everything quite succinctly, quite well. So I'd like to entertain someone to propose a motion to accept this job description in its final form of being posted. Like, it's either going to be Gail presented it, I'm the chair, Judy's done a lot, so I think it's either Jamie or Mimi. Mimi is going to move. Great. And the motion was to, do you have the motion?
Yeah, that the Community Center Joint Management Committee approve the Bowen Theatre Programming and Production Coordinator job description. Manager.
Right. And seconded.
Hold
by-
on.
Oh,
Sorry, manager job description as presented at its and amended at its June 30th, 2025 meeting. Reflect the word manager.
great. Who's going to second it? And Jillian's going to second it. Well done. Everyone those in favor?
Can we speak to it?
Yes, you can. Oh, sorry, speak to the comment. Yeah,
So,
before we vote.
first of all, I think we're all in agreement that, this idea of a curated program is important and fundamental, certainly in terms of making the position, sustainable and widely supported. I think that it's certainly taken me a little bit of time to figure out what the differences were between road post production or program and, curate it. But, that's just getting used to a new jargon, and every specialized industry, every interest group has their own jargon, and that's something that I understand. So I think there's fundamental support for, trying to get as much funding as we can and make ourselves eligible for outside funding to, provide an extended program in terms of off-island productions and performers, and what we've seen so far in terms of bringing in really high-quality professional programming. That's good for the theater, and it's good for the whole audience. And I think that if this can get off the ground and be successful, I don't know what the audience capacity is on the one, but if it can be successful over a long period of time, then it's that sustainable support for creation of its own program. I do have problems with respect to, I suppose, in part, this idea about managing as opposed to coordinating. And it's just been described as managing a curated program. The problem with that is that while it's important for the HERT to be able to have that secured funding, one of the basic fundamental premises of this theater space and the creation of it was collaboration with on-island performers and production. So while we've got this opening line that says that there's going to be collaboration, it hasn't been that easy, and it's not enough to simply say the word. So I'm not entirely sure why it's been so difficult to develop and build on that collaboration, but certainly with respect to my understanding of the three existing theater production groups on Bowen, there's a huge amount of sharing and collaboration, both with respect to figuring out calendars, booking spaces, sharing equipment, support for each other. All the different groups come out to help build the stage and to take it down and the rest, and act in each other's things. So I'm not sure if it's most of the people in this room that are working on it, most of the people on council have not been working on this for 30 years. They don't necessarily appreciate the extent of the sharing and the collaboration. And it's not built into this job description in any way, other than building relationships. So bulk of the work in the earlier description of this was mentioned today in terms of managing curated program. It's fundamentally mostly the curated program. So that, and there's that line that was in the original paragraph 2 in terms of beyond avoiding direct competition with other presenters, this series will ensure diversity of presentation. That's the elephant in the room. And if the Hearth has this curated program that is first and foremost their emphasis and their concern and their energy, then, and they can book 24 months in advance, then basically the rest of the production companies ongoing take second fiddle, and we can book a space 21 months out. I'm not sure what kind of a situation it would put Sienna in, but if we have to, in order to try and keep foot in the door, and to keep to the kinds of production needs that we have, which are longer than a one-night stand and longer than somebody coming in off island, then we have to put the money up. And I'm not even sure that we're going to be able to put the money up to get a deposit on the time slots that we're planning on 2 years out, which would tie up a lot of our finances. It's certainly possible financially, and we've made a suggestion to both King Baby and Bard that we're going to be bankers for them so that they're able to put down deposits. But it is direct, competition, and that is really unfortunate. And it takes away from a sense of collaboration, and it would be, in terms of putting on successful productions for the 45 years that I've been on board and building an audience and helping with the fundraising. I think it's really important that these kinds of principles get included in this description of what we want this manager to be doing on island with community groups. So, and I provided, one of the things was to manage the production intake process for each event. Well, we've been doing productions now for a considerable period of time. This is a production checklist that I wrote 20 years ago. So I provided everybody a copy of this. It's been revised. Fraser and Calder have been doing productions more recently, and they've revised this to a certain extent, with certainly differences with respect to ticketing and such. And I'm sure that there'd be major revisions now that we're using this building and this facility. But in terms of collaboration, if this is a major project for this new position, there are people on this island that have done production for quite some time who could collaborate, and that would be really interesting for all of us. So, without that, and without figuring out how to make that work, then I am voting against this job description. I realize that the numbers are certainly not in my favor, but just so that it's not a surprise in terms of the funding comments that I'll be making.
Is there any amendment that you could propose, Judy, that you think would capture? Because I think when we were working on it, at least I was under the assumption that this coordinator would be working with Tony and King Baby. And in fact, when we were talking about it, even at the hearth level, that they would be included in the consideration when it came to making sure that there weren't events or programming that would be conflicting, particularly with those ones. But I can see how, as it's written right now, that hasn't been made crystal clear as a job description. This person is collaborating, and particularly in the curation area, with those particular organizations, right? Because now it's just, if I look at the program coordination, it's just good relationship with local and off-island artists. There's no special consideration for those groups that are on island. Is that trying to summarize your major concern about the job description, right? So if it was rewritten, that somehow that it was more clearly defined in terms of exactly which groups were being collaborated with and in what way.
Okay, what I had suggested at some point, and I suppose it was before the chat GPT was done, intends to or aspires or wishes to organize and present an annual curated program of events for Bowen Theatre to provide a full, rich, and varied experience for existing and hopefully expanding Bowen audience in order to maximize full potential of the Bowen Theatre as a performance space. And the hearth wishes, intends, and aspires to prioritize productions by local groups and individual performers in the curated calendar, and will canvass local productions for availability and time requirements prior to engaging off-island performance or events.
Right, that's good.
And the municipality, including council, recreation, and possibly the library, may also have dates that they wish to reserve for their events, like Canada Day, and should be canvassed and accommodated where possible, keeping in mind the need to maximize revenue from ticket sales for performance events. That leaves probably 300 days a year where the one-off or the other contracts in terms of off-island could fit into the calendar, and I think it leaves lots of room, and it prioritizes and speaks to directly the local. And I know that that's a concern that's come up from the mayor and Councillor Wake and Councillor Morris in terms of Councilor Morris keeps saying, this is supposed to be a space that was developed for not just performance, but local use.
Yeah.
And, I think that is an argument that, will be raised, and certainly, I've got my opinions on that. I prefer performance over broader community use, just because it's helping to pay for all the high costs that we've invested in that, but, I also suggested with respect to the, calendar, but it seems that's been taken out, so,
And Gail, maybe do you want to speak, that was those things were taken out of this job description in terms of trying to make it more brief, or? Do you want to speak to that?
The line that, beyond avoiding competition, that line that Counselor Getty quoted was removed in part because there was a note on it saying that's the crux of the issue. So I didn't think that, from my interpretation of the meaning of that, was that it didn't get at an assurance anyway. So, and it didn't come up in the ChatGPT reduction of it into a bite size, a size that could be interpreted by someone who is thinking more about the job than the sort of background agreements between organizations. Also, so then the three paragraphs that were just read don't feel to me like a job posting. They feel like it's a basis of understanding between parties. And though I think the basis of agreement is important, I don't think it belongs in a job posting, because it's a little bit confusing for the person, an applicant, to understand what the context of the meaning of those three things might be. I mean, I'm listening, and I guess one of the things that I would like to share is that, I could say many things, but I guess I would start by saying I think it's a 1-year position that we have a guaranteed funding, and I think that we need to have a professional in the role aiming to do a good job. And if they're not doing a good job by enough of the people who are in a decision-making position, then it would be the right time to reevaluate their job and the performance of the individual in the job. At some point, I think we need to hire someone in anticipation of the next season starting to build again in September as our summer draws to a close. And if we don't put this job description in front of applicants, we will not be ready for September. And I think at that point, we will regret that we didn't take a risk on it and see what a professional might do with the position.
Yeah, sorry, Jillian, yeah.
I'm wondering if it might help with this, if we were to break down the first bullet under programming coordination and just have a unique bullet that is about maintaining and enhancing the relationships with local artists or production companies, or something about incorporating the scheduling needs of these groups, or something that's a standalone bullet that is specifically speaking to local.
Right, I would even go as far as to use the word collaborate. In the spirit of
Just
what
add
Judy
that
was-
in as a bullet right
Yeah.
off the bat.
Yeah.
That's
And
important.
I do know that just from the context of being able to secure funding from Heritage, it's absolutely imperative that there is strong community engagement and collaboration. Because when you're doing their programming, they have their programming that you're doing, then they have outreach, connection with the community. Like, for example, at Presentation House, we collaborate with the North Shore Zone Festival, which are 5 community-based theater companies, and they're part of our regular programming and included in it. And we include that with our heritage application, and we get funded to support those groups. I think that was the spirit of this, not that it was in competition with it, but there would be direct collaboration. And that doesn't make it, so as I said before, it's not mutually exclusive. It's not like community-based work and professional work. there's basically a roadhouse, which is usually only community-based work. And people who book it, but there's no funding for that. But if you get curated in collaboration with community, then you can get support. Yes, Jamie.
I just want to clarify something, in policy that you guys have revised, under room booking, it says that volunteer theater will be heavily used by the hearth. Community rep, in and the community, so right there, it says that it will be, we will support, the theater will support all of those.
Right.
So I'm just trying to clarify in my mind where the gap is, that the hearth is not supporting community organizations.
Well, I think,
That's kind of what I'm hearing is that it's just the hearth thing and it's series, but it's not. The hearth will be doing co-presentations as well, which are other than the series.
Right.
So I just need clarification on that, because I've always assumed that the hearth will support all the community organizations, that there is no favor of one or the other.
well, I think what I heard from you, Judy, was the word collaboration. We're working in collaboration with, particularly in terms of developing programming and being at the table and not being, as you said, second fiddle, so that they're participating at that planning point. And I'm wondering if, and that's what this job is really coordinator or manager, is participating in that planning. So Judy, if we found a way to capture that in this, to revise it, would there be a chance that you could support it?
Well, in answer to Jamie, none of the theater groups are going to be co-presenting. So that's a 50% share of the house, and it's providing. It's not even clear here one from the other in terms of, and I have questions whether that intended to, the heart somehow would have the funding to put down all the deposits and pay things up front. There was some discussion in an earlier version in terms of,
I don't know that the heart has a budget to deposit for all bands.
exactly. So,
I don't know that it would belong in a job description either.
no, but that was one of the things that was in the earlier version, so.
Yeah,
And
but
that
if there's
wasn't-
another document that needs to be created
Yeah.
around process and procedures, things, I mean, that,
If we're getting
also
to
be done.
co-presentation, that was one of the things that was just, that was part of the descriptor on what that meant. It's not in this job description.
no,
And, that's not something that any of the three production companies or many of the people that are coming to Park Island that are, would be Roadhouse, that we might want, are going to be splitting the ticket.
yeah, but I don't see that as part of a job.
Right, I think, and actually, this is a job posting, not even a job description. So it's been turned from a job description into a job posting, so it
And
doesn't
spinning
capture.
on- The
everything,
question was,
yeah.
what is the problem in terms of community liaison? It's going to be happening through co-presentations. I get into what the definition of co-presentation is, that's not something that feels. The many, right? So that's not the collaboration with the local group. So in terms of,
I thought that the heart was also supporting this sort of the one-off self-presentations. At least with the tour of the facility. Things like that, so I don't think that the heart is saying, no, we're not supporting or helping. And if the theater groups want to do it on their own, then we're here to support that. But I don't think that we're here to support that positive.
so. In terms of the, this curated program and the federal funding and the need to make sure that that is, a positive financial success for the park in terms of the future funding of this position. We get all that. That's important, right? And it's, about 10 performances a year. Okay? When we get down to, and that's completely separate and hopefully it succeeds in terms of all competition for federal funding. It's not something that is gonna help the local groups. Right? So if that's the focus, it's important, it's necessary, I get it, it's going to add to the community, it's gonna add to the oil, it's enriching, all the positive things. But it's gonna take a lot of time and focus, and in that, and all these production things that we're talking about. And in that, there's virtually nothing that is going to be of any assistance to, the local production company. So we pay for a membership and we get insurance and, we can send in a poster and it gets posted on the newsletter that goes out.
What more would you want?
Sorry, Gail had her hand up, and then go ahead, Gail.
First of all, I'd like to request that people speak just a little bit more loudly,
Oh,
if that would be helpful for me to be able to hear some of the conversation. Thank you. That's just a side point. And I do want to say that we have, for instance, even without this professional person who would be paid for the job of curation and programming, those 10 shows that we managed to write a grant for, every one of them has been scheduled around a requested engagement by a local theater group, a local arts music group. So anybody who got a request into us before we set our dates, we worked around that. And that's even before we have someone whose designated job it is to do that. So I think that it would be my desire that there would be some basis of trust is the word that I want to say, that we have worked around many calendars up till now. We have worked around a calendar for this upcoming year, and building trust happens through process, but it also, I'm not sure where the erosion of that trust would come from, in that we haven't considered the dates and we've sanctified the dates. And over time, what often happens in a theater is a group becomes kind of entrenched in a particular time, like October. There might be begin to be an assumption that October and late May, there would be shows by Theater on the Isle. Now, I know King Baby likes to move theirs around a little bit more. At least Jackie Mins told me that when I asked her, do you think you would fall into a schedule of something like one summer show, one winter show? And she said, not for us. We tend to move ours around. And even though it's a change this year from the usual dates of late February, beginning of March, for 2026, Part of the Rock has requested to move to April. And so that becomes, it becomes an annual flow. And we start to anticipate that unless told otherwise. And the programming should accommodate that almost proactively, but collaboration and consultation should be ongoing. It shouldn't be just an assumption. But I would like to just make that statement that there are grounds for trust, in my opinion.
Thank you, Gail. I think maybe what Councilor Getty is getting at, though, is the idea of collaboration and services provided. And as we have been working through, we haven't really concretely defined services provided for specific groups. I mean, we were talking about the theater groups right now because we don't have, unless I'm unaware of, we don't have a dance group that we're trying to collaborate with, and music.
We do. We have a dance group that has come to us and asked for the same type of, could they have a residency in the theater? So there's lots of requests on the island. There's music groups who approached us.
Say music as well, and maybe that's what's actually missing. But I'm also hearing two things. I've got you, Judy, is that one is the job description, which is where the rubber meets the road in terms of the hire and the person who's being hired, and they know exactly what they're supposed to be doing. But Judy's point also is that It's the type of person that you're looking for. And so there needs to be something in the job description that indicates to the person that is applying for it, that they're going to have a closer collaboration with the local community, performing arts organizations than they would, let's say, in another community, right? Because it's quite strong here. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Judy, and then, I just want to get Judy and then you, Jamie.
Well, what Gail has just described then, in terms of the process that was followed, in terms of, not sure if you mentioned 10 presentations then, and that's assuming the application that went in for grants ahead in the future, then that is taking into account this whole thing in terms of figuring out the local performers are in fact part of the curated calendar, because you have canvassed local productions for availability and time requirements prior to engaging off-island performers or events. So if that's the process, and that's what we're looking for, then there isn't a problem. But
Right.
that's not what the key responsibilities in terms of having an expanded bullet point or a different bullet point. Coordinate annual programming to ensure a balanced and vibrant calendar of events. You know, we maybe need to expand on that so that it's spelled out. A job description, the person needs to know that not only are they beating the bushes and canvassing off island and people that are on tour that are national and international performers, but also locally.
And sorry, Jamie, just to add to that, that is actually a priority with heritage funding. That's where I think I don't see as big of an issue with this, because in a heritage funding application, you would be including Tony, a lot of the local groups in your program in order to be eligible for funding. That's actually an eligibility criteria. So it's not as mutually exclusive. Sorry, Jamie, you had your hand up.
Well, I just wanted to follow up on another comment about, what more does the self-presentation want? We offer the newsletter, we post the posters, we have liability insurance. What more?
Collaboration when it comes to programming, right? At that core level.
I mean, discussions in terms of, I don't know what you've got, I have no idea what you've got on your plate in terms of the potential of the 10 performers, but we're trusting you in terms of, if you know that there's a Shakespeare production, you're not gonna bring in another Shakespeare. If you know that there's, whatever you categorize David and Jackie's work as in terms of vaudeville almost, there's not gonna be another theater production back to back. So that's not the issue. The issue is figuring out as much as possible, if we're part of your planning and the calendar, then we don't have to go out of our way to book the theater and use all of our money on deposits. Right? Because that's really, if we're competing, that's really our only option.
You're having to reserve that space like everyone else.
No, we're having to reserve that space before you get out.
I think we're doing it all together.
Yeah,
Well, okay, that's the issue.
right. Crystal?
I'm wondering if by adding, a new bullet, as Jillian suggested, at the very top, showing that it's a priority. Something similar to collaborate with local artists and organizations to develop programming in the Bowling Theater. That's the one standalone.
Yeah.
Bullet. And then I've heard you mention more than one occasion about the difficulty of the groups to come up with the deposits. So this is something that's not gonna be addressed in any kind of job description. Is there something perhaps that, a potential suggestion to council that there be set aside a small bursary fund to fund deposits for local groups? Like, is that something that could be addressed through the community grants program, perhaps, something like that?
Well,
May I make
I
a,
don't think that's gonna be an issue at this point. I mean, Theater on the Isle had several successful productions, and we've got enough money in our accounts that we can bank for other groups. So if it does get into a situation where we're not part of the curated program and we need to just try and nail down our dates, you know, God help us 2 years out, then, you know, we'll be able to do that. That's a different issue in terms of, you know, this person, if it's a, if what we're talking about is, as Gail describes, that the planning for the calendar is such that there's the local groups, whatever, whether it's the production companies or whether it's other people that come forward in terms of all of these, you know, other types of presentations that we talked about with the, what is it called? You've written this.
Oh, sorry, the presentation of social event calendar.
Yes, presentation of social event. Right, so if there's somehow or other, beat the bushes and try to figure out as much as you can in advance, if somebody's got something planned, you know, with Tim Wake and his cousin or something that wanted to bring this First Nations presentation, and they get in touch and they figure out a date and everybody's happy with it. So that figuring out who the local interests are and having some way of helping get that into the calendar that fits the production needs and plans for the different groups. So that, if that is coordinate annual programming to ensure balanced and vibrant calendar of events with prioritizing productions by local groups and individual performers before engaging off-island people.
Right. Well, I mean,
Simple enough addition, what you just said, that was.
right. But what Kristen and Jillian were getting at too, which is some groups like Toady, actually, I look at as a series. Because you're always doing a show every year, you're always doing, right? So it's like part of a series, and that's where the collaboration comes. Because you're collaborating with groups who are already having a series. When Tim Wakes wants to do a one-off, that's actually, you still want to work with that, but that's a little bit different because when you're talking about planning in advance, you want to be working with it. And I kind of like what Kristen and Jillian suggested was that a bullet point up at the top, because that sort of implies that this position, this program manager is going to be collaborating with these other people who do series on the island. And that's at the very beginning of it, that collaboration is at the beginning of the conversation, which I think is the intent.
It's always been.
The intent, yeah,
Always been.
yeah, the very top,
Conversation.
yeah.
But
And
that
then-
person would reach out to the community and. find
First.
What they wanna do.
First, yeah.
What their dates are.
Yeah.
It's
And-
always been.
So maybe we can, I wonder if we can craft that bullet
Yeah,
here and. give it a-
Bullet time.
yeah. Is there, yeah, so we want to, you mean craft it like right this minute?
Well, so that we can-
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's time.
Sure,
So I've got that started.
and your addition, Judy, was, which might be a second sentence to this.
You only get one.
Sentence? What does that, supposed to do those two aspects, is there not a swear word like?
No, I just missed it.
You read, collaborate with local artists, mentors, and community-based artists to develop something.
I said
Yeah.
to develop programming in the bowl.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
And then maybe it's coordinate annual programming to ensure a balanced and vibrant calendar, and then build relationship with off-island presenters and friends.
Yeah.
Just in terms of an order.
An order priority.
So this is the first bullet of all?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then second bullet is the
Under programming. The first bullet under programming, yeah.
Yeah, under program.
and sorry, what was the second one? Build,
Coordinate, it's existing.
Coordinate annual programming.
yeah, and then the next one is a build relationships. I'm just speaking to the order, right?
Yep.
Okay. Et cetera. But this is the new element.
Right.
You understand the issue of prioritizing?
You mean when you prioritize it, this is the first, yes, that's important.
So
So that's,
the competition is, I've got 10 groups from outside that are fabulous and spectacular, and I wanna slot them in here and here and here and here. And if they go first, then the community groups are trying to figure out where they slot. And a one-off could be a Friday night, and that'll wreck the weekend for the performing.
yeah.
Right, so
Oh, you mean like prioritizing together and Art gets to vote first before
what
anyone
Gail
else
said
does?
was the process in terms, they go around to the local group.
Yeah.
And ask what you think your plans are gonna be, and they then work around.
Yeah.
Plugging in some holes.
Yeah.
So there could be in the middle of the week, it could be, you know, a weekend that doesn't have anything else, and there's more flexibility.
Yeah.
So,
So I think this captures that, right, in terms of the, because we made it number one, the first aspect is to collaborate locally first, right?
where
And
does it
then,
say first?
well.
It's just number one.
Number one, collaborate local community artists, presenters and organize and develop programming, well, in theaters, that's the first thing that they do, right? Second thing is they can coordinate annual calendars to try and find other things. The third thing is to build relationships with groups off islands to fill in the gaps. So I think if I were looking at that job description, I would, you know, and obviously in the hire, it's like let's say the rubber hits the road, this is a job posting. But at least gives somebody an idea of what it is, and then when you go into, see,
The other thing that's slightly tricky about all of this is that we're doing this from the perspective of the presenters and the posters. But we're not necessarily factoring in is hearing from community what they want.
right,
And how do we, like, what do they want? Do they want lots of off island? Do they want their familiar neighbors? What do they want? How do we make sure that we're actually building in what the people?
well, that actually goes with what anyone who does this job does. Because if you're trying to become eligible for funding from Canadian Heritage, you absolutely have to measure and prove you've got strong community engagement and support with the programming, right? And that they have mechanisms and feedback, like in terms of they measure outreach, participation, and so that I would see that's a given. And then what you're talking about are the tools in which you do that. Do you do surveys? Do you have a suggestion box? How do you canvass the community? Those are all tools that people use. And so I think what's important is at what point do we put that in? Is that in the job description? Or is that where, when you're building this, where does that information reside, right? Like those mechanisms. And that's where it becomes challenging. But I do think Gail is right that the position is more of a managing position than a coordinator position, because there isn't anybody who's overseeing it. They're the one that this person is going to have to develop those tools and implement that process. So, and they're going to have a couple of bosses, right? Like they'll have the hard and also BIM and also local community groups they're going to have to listen to. So the question is, how do you frame that? I mean, I'm going, I think for a job posting, we're definitely tipped in the right direction. But will there hopefully be another round when it goes to make the hire? Yes, Judy?
Gail had a comment.
Oh, sorry. Yes, go ahead, Gail.
I'm just wondering if we can incorporate in this new list, Jillian's comment that build relationship with local and off-island artists, presenters, organizations, and audiences.
Oh. That'll do it.
That would be number 3, because then, I mean, that feels important too.
Sorry, Jamie, you had your hand up?
No, I was just.
Oh, pointing. My computer died, that's why I plugged it out. I've lost my front-facing view.
It's a little view there.
Thanks, Steph. Yes, Judy.
So it's also part of, number 3, audience development. So supporting the EP and the PAC and audience development, figuring out how to do the surveys and the exit interviews and whatever else. So things they could turn in on the program, but leave at the door.
So do we want to?
Can someone repeat that? I'm missing this piece of it.
It's also included in number 3, the audience development. So whether it's, however you do that in terms of, surveys or exit interviews or something.
Well, we already have one kind of almost written that we were hoping to roll out possibly as early as BOFEST. We'll have to see if we can, but we do have this in our sites, if we can move that quickly.
A survey.
A survey?
A survey. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's,
Alright,
but for,
another question then, the last bullet point in number 2, production services, collaborate with the PAC for programming input. Is that where it can be elaborated, expanded in terms of, local production?
That one relates to the Hearth Presents series, and it's where, that was why there was no number 3. The ChatGPT, thanks for catching that. ChatGPT messed up there and was having a hard time identifying. So the programmer doesn't have to program the 10 touring shows. That will be the responsibility of the Performing Arts Committee. So it won't be a huge draw on their time to be seeking all that programming. That will be a volunteer board committee.
So
and
not
that,
for this.
So the coordinator or the manager then is going to collaborate with the PAC
right,
for programming input.
right.
So is the program manager also required to collaborate with, local productions?
It could be, or the
I don't
development
think- I
of
don't
the,
think the numbering of the
Right.
bullet points is necessarily clear enough in
right,
terms of it being a priority.
right, gotcha, because it's so far down.
But I think this place is under production services, so this would be tasks that could be expected if somebody was looking for additional production services.
Perhaps that line just needs to say more like collaborate with the PAC. Or to implement, like it's more about implementing that programming, right, rather than,
Mm-hmm.
so. To implement, so maybe it's more just to implement,
Maybe we could change the bullet point ahead and say lead producer for approximately 10 touring shows annually selected by the Performing Arts Committee or the PAC.
And Gail, am I wrong to think that the Performing Arts Committee is a mechanism for groups like Theater on the Isle to participate? Like, because the Performing Arts Committee is made up of local artists right now, mostly musicians right now. But that's only because they were the ones who started meeting, right?
I mean, if people want to join our PAC to select the off-island artists, they could certainly, they could put their name forward to join the PAC. Absolutely. We want more people on the PAC.
We're thinking, right, and to broaden its expertise, because
Mhm.
expertise is primarily dance and music. There is actually no one officially on the Performing Arts Committee.
We've asked the other people to
Right.
join.
Yeah, we had someone on there once from the theater community, and in their stead, we've had Jamie Nesbitt, who is a professional theater artist, who is our chair.
Yeah, but anyway, I'm just thinking that might be another as to answer
Mhm.
Judy, is that a mechanism, an additional mechanism for input on that program? Anyway, are we close
Who's the
to approving this job posting as amended?
Have we figured out this last bullet on this collaborate with the PAC?
That's where we were trying to get to that, with the PAC.
Sorry, are we amending this lead producer bullet though?
Well, I don't know if we.
No?
That was.
well, I
briefly for me.
I was going to say, if the key point of that collaborate with the PAC is directly related to those productions in the
Yeah.
former, the bullet prior, let's put it in there,
Yeah,
add it to that. And like work with PAC to identify artists and assistant productions or something.
yeah,
But if what the intent is to add local groups to that programming input line. If that's the objective, then then we have what's it different.
Right, that's what I'm trying to figure out what the
Yeah.
mechanism was, is it through the pack or is there another bullet, or do we need to expand the bullet to include other input?
Just a small word of warning, when you start to include the community in planning your season,
I know.
it'll get out of control.
Yeah, well,
Absolutely,
I
you won't
understand.
get anything done because everyone has an opinion.
That's why you need one person who actually is making the calls and trying to put them together, because practicalities.
So it
Are
it
huge.
sounds to me that a key part of what the objective is in communicating that that's part of this job is so that this individual knows they're working with the committee to do the work.
That's right,
Mhm.
that's the.
Is that
yeah,
right?
That's
So
right.
let's put it in the form of, in the bullet above it.
Yeah.
Work with the performing
Which
arts
bullet?
committees.
Yeah.
The lead producer bullet.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna work, lead producer 10 shows annually.
And then just add at the end of it, work with the performing arts committee.
Mm-hmm.
To implement.
You know,
Oh.
just with adding as selected by the PAC after the words permit that's.
Well, that's what I was trying to get at. Is it just about saying the PAC is choosing the artist, or is the point that they're working with a committee?
They're working, the point is they're working with the committee. That's,
Why don't we leave it at that? Yes, in, working with the pack on the programming.
And that goes after the brackets? At the
Um,
very end?
Let me look, I'm sorry, lead,
I was sorry, I wish I'd asked for a Word document. There was some funniness with the PDF. I kind of should have gotten a Word or gotten ready to edit. So 10 touring shows annually in the Hearth Presents series. Handling artist contracting, event logistics, and post-show reporting, including photos and audience feedback bracket. And work with the pack.
yeah, I'm not too sure I would put in the job posting 10. Because then I would just put performing arts series. At this point, it's a job posting.
lead producer for the Hearth Presents series, programmed in collaboration with the pack.
That's right. That's it.
Lead producer for the Hearth Presents series,
Okay,
programmed in collaboration with the pack.
okay.
And then you could leave the bracket or the parentheses the same.
And if you wanted to really enforce it, you could put it in consultation with local artists.
No, I can't do that. That is just, we are already consulting
Right,
on the programming coordination. The first line is to collaborate with local community-based artists, presenters, and organizations to develop programming in the Bowen Theater. It goes too far that we can't, we have to move on those sometimes so quickly. And we're just setting ourselves up to fail, and I would prefer to be able to succeed.
okay.
Sorry, can you give me that line again after the Hearts Presents series, Gail?
Yeah.
Yep.
To lead producer of the Hearth Presents series, programmed in collaboration with the pack.
Okay.
And then,
Mm-hmm.
and then the parentheses should be able to stay the same.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Right.
This is gone now.
The amendment?
And then are we taking out collaborate with the pack for programming input? Does that just come out?
That goes out.
It comes up because we've already got it.
Oh. We're taking that whole bullet out.
I think so.
Okay.
And then changing number 4 to number 3 if that hasn't already happened.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's been noted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Can we see it?
Oh,
Yeah, just what the changes are.
okay. So under the programming coordination first section, we've added a bullet at the top. Collaborate with local community-based artists, presenters, and organizations to develop programming in the Bowen Theater. Then we've moved coordinate annual programming to ensure a balanced and vibrant calendar of events to the next bullet, and we will build relationships to the third with local and off-island artists, presenters, organizations, and audience. The rest stays as presented. The next section, production services, the 1, 2, 3, fourth bullet. So we'll say lead producer for. Get rid of approximately 10 touring shows annually in. Lead producer for The Hearth Presents, programmed in collaboration with the PAC, and then we have that list that follows in brackets. And we're gonna take out the next bullet, collaborate with the PAC, because it's already in that bullet. Then section 3, which is developing marketing and administration. No, nothing. Forget it, just those two.
That's just those two.
Yeah.
Great, thank you very much. I have to go back, and did we actually have?
We have a mover and a
we
seconder,
have a
this was
mover,
the
a seconder,
discussion.
This was the discussion,
Yeah.
this is the amendment that we made, yes,
Did
Jillian?
we put in the motion though, as amended? Does
Not
that
yet.
amended?
No,
Yeah.
well, we know, I
Oh,
think we'd already amended it, but we were doing it, hadn't we, or not?
I think, because we'd already moved the bullet number. We changed the title to manager and we changed the
right.
bullet, so it would have been amended already.
Right, so this is the motion, yes. So comments on this amended, a document now that we've amended it. How are you feeling, Judy?
I need to see the, programming coordination,
You need to
key
see,
responsibilities.
Where's
key responsibility, public coordination, that was the part that she just read, right? Do you wanna go through it again, Steph?
No,
No, that's it, isn't it?
Um,
1, 2, and 3, right?
can you pull that up?
Yeah, sorry, it's not, no, okay.
There we go. Oh, I was there and it popped away.
Okay,
There we go. So this is what it's going to read now. So where it says key responsibilities. 1 is program coordination, and it'll read 1, collaborate with local community-based artists, presenters, and organizations that are programming in the Holland Theater. 2 will be ordinary annual programming to ensure a balanced and vibrant calendar of events. And 3 will be build relationships with local and offline artists, presenters, organizations, and audiences. There will be, then is it, number 4 stays the same,
yeah,
right? Manage production intake process.
and
5
5 is,
gather, submit and market content for the Bowen Theater calendar. So that one, bullet point 2, production services,
section 2,
Section
bullet point
2.
4.
sorry, thank you, stays the same. Right? And
Hmm.
number 4 will just be added to lead producer 4,
The Hearth Presents series.
Hearth Present series, right?
Programmed in-
Programmed in collaboration with the PAC. So that would be a bullet that's added in there, and then the other 2 bullets stay the same. Is that right, Steph?
Mhm.
So that's the.
No, we're taking out the collaborate with the
right.
PAC,
Yeah, we're taking that out. So,
because we moved it to the more specific place of
Right.
during the series.
you can understand that. We haven't seen it yet in the change form, but those are the changes that are.
Mhm. Oh, sorry, and we added audiences here.
And
My
audience.
bad for not
Yeah.
yellowing that. There we go.
That's-
So let's coordinate. Programming.
So this is relying on collaborate. That verb, and then in the second point, a balanced and vibrant calendar.
Yeah.
And third, local and off island and audience.
Any other comments? No, shall we call it to a vote? Those are in favor of approving this job posting, I'm calling it.
As presented and
As
amended.
Presented and amended to the committee. And to council. Okay? Yeah, yes, Gail, yes, go ahead, Gail. Or is that just Anna voting for it? Yes, she voted for it, yes. Everyone else in favor? Anyone else opposed? One opposed. So Judy's opposed. Okay.
Wait, excuse me, did we just amend it to request, to try and get a unanimous vote?
I think
We don't have a unanimous vote?
address Judy's concerns, but I don't know if we're going to be able to address Judy's concerns in this. I guess my concern is if we pass it and it goes to council, and Judy's probably gonna vote against it on council.
I don't think it's going to council.
going to
We have to
council?
approve
Oh.
it and then, sorry, you have to approve it.
This
And then
committee has to
council will
pass it.
be just using that approval to discuss their service agreement. Or their grant agreement.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
Oh,
this isn't something,
No.
no.
Okay. Good, well, I'd like to, just for the sake of time, I'd like to call it, because we passed it, but it'll be noted that Councillor Getty isn't in support of it, and that we've had discussed that, and we're working towards addressing those concerns. A note would be that this is a job posting, and the committee is fully, not, well, we're not fully cognizant yet of all the concerns, but we are, what's the word I'm looking for? We're trying to work to address those concerns. But we think we're gonna try and capture them in the job description. And
There's
the
no more
hire.
work being done.
No.
Like, this is all we have, this is all we're going to do, so
Oh, okay,
there could be policies that could
Right.
be developed around
oh, I see.
how people carry out the functions, but,
Right.
but this is, you call it a posting, I'm calling it a
Job
job description,
description.
this
That's-
is all we
Okay,
have.
so that's kind of what happened when it got sent through TPTI, turned into a job posting. We have a job description when someone read it and sign it, which is a little bit more robust, like it's a little bit more detailed.
This is operational.
So that's
Right,
operational
stuff, yeah.
You know, I think part of it is that it's brand new.
Right.
And I think that a little bit is going to be kind of. Let's just get started and let's get going on it, and we're gonna have to kind of figure a little bit of this out.
Okay.
So I think this is the best that could be done to encapsulate all of the things that are anticipated that this person is going to be responsible for. Likely some new things, just like Sienna came to us today to
Yeah.
say, hey,
Right,
Exactly.
we thought this is how it's gonna work, and really we need to change a couple things. The other side of this is that in the agreement with council, there is an expectation for reporting. How are things going? What have you got coming down the pipe? What sort of information do you have that can inform how we do this going forward? So a lot of it, I think, like Gail said, it's a little bit of a leap of faith in that we just really don't know all of the things that this person is going to be responsible for, but we've tried our best to kind of encapsulate it.
good, thank you, still very clear. So good, I'm gonna call it, we didn't have it unanimously, but majority passed it, supported it. So now we move on to
Other business?
other business. right?
There's no other business,
business?
and I don't believe there are any action items other than getting that out there,
Right. yes.
amended and out.
Good, great, thank you, that's it. Yes, go ahead, Kristen.
Is there a Word document for this? Because that would help us with the editing and getting it on the agenda.
Partially find it, but I think Gail, you might have had the Word doc that you put through AI that. I tried to find it, but I can't.
I thought PDFs only came out of Word docs. I didn't know they existed on their own.
No, you can create a PDF.
Okay, I'll try. and
Is it
create Word
a
document.
Gail, is it easy for you to have the?
Well, I can
sample
turn it into a Word
document of this,
doc.
or should we just turn this into a Word document?
Yeah, we'll turn it into. a
We
Word.
can do it.
Okay, good, thank
I
you.
tried to find it.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Gail.
Gail.
Enjoy your month
Bye.
off.
Bye.
2 months, no?
2 months? Oh, yeah.
Thank you, so meeting
Do
adjourned,
you want me to convert the PDF to a Word doc?
We can
No,
do
it's
that.
Mimi voted that we adjourned.
Ah.
Sorry, motion, Mimi voted, Move that we adjourn.
Oh, did I?
Oh,
I was
just- I got the picture.
Ah, You know, it's like gonna be in an auction. You're like, you just bought a $10,000 painting.
Thank you.
You're opening your hand up.